We're here because Thomas Edison invented the 20th century. This is the first professional recording studio in the world, which is really amazing. And we are recording the Kronos Quartet behind me onto wax cylinder. Something that your grandmother or great-grandmother might have enjoyed and not understood how terrible it sounded.
Who's we? Explain this project a little more.
So I started, about 25 years ago, I started an organization called Red Hot that produces albums to benefit AIDS organizations around the world. Red Hot is also essentially a creative production company, and the cornerstone of what we do is reinterpret music in a very contemporary way. We started out by taking the songs of Cole Porter on Red Hot and Blue and blowing them out of Ella Fitzgerald and mid-20th century modern way with Annie Lennox and U2 and the Neville Brothers, Tom Waits, David Byrne. And we're doing it again now with Johann Sebastian Bach, a guy who most people think of as an old German dude with jowls and a white wig. But in fact, he was a really cool young fellow who basically started what we now consider Western classical music. So rather than thinking of classical music as this very old-fashioned, kind of wealthy approach, we're saying that this is an exciting new thing. And what's really exciting about what we're doing is we are not just recording an album, we are making an interactive music app for an iPad. And we are taking the ability of technology to change how you record and listen to music. So for the first time, you will be able to interact with the music as you listen to it. So a lot of what the Kronos Quartet are doing here is really David Harrington's idea, who's over my shoulder, is recording a performance in this room, Edison's first professional recording studio, on wax cylinder, 78 disc, analog tape, and multi-track digital Pro Tools. And then the user of the iPad app will be able to toggle and switch back and forth between these different sound mediums and essentially for the first time hear what things would have sounded like to your great-grandmother, your grandmother, your parents, and your children.
But the app is not just a historical comparison of recording technology. There's much more to it, isn't there?
Yeah, the app is really rethinking what music will be like in the 21st century. So most of the performances in the app will actually be much more modern, kind of rethinking of Bach altogether. And what the user will be able to do is interact with the different layers and explore all the different things that go into a piece of music. And almost like a video game, the more they explore, the more they will unlock surprises, hidden layers, and really feel like they're becoming part of the music. And every time they listen to it, it'll be a completely new experience.
Your emotional impression about what's going on tonight, how do you feel? How's it going so far?
Well, when I was about 6 years old, I went on a class trip to this very place, the Thomas Edison Museum Factory. And even as a 6-year-old, it blew my mind that this is where the recorded music, movies, the light bulb, all kinds of things that we take for granted in our lives were actually invented and made. Because the thing about Edison is he essentially created the whole recording business. He was the first man to understand that it wasn't just about recording music, it was the ability to manufacture and reproduce it. And think of all the joy that that's brought into everybody's lives in the 100+ years since then.
So Thomas Edison worked in this room. He used to sit right over there listening to playbacks with his ear trumpet because he was basically profoundly deaf. What do you think he would have thought about all this technology? Would he have said, told you so, or would he have been amazed?
Well, the irony, of course, is that Thomas Edison was pretty much deaf. So the guy who invented music and would sit in this room and judge whether things sounded good or not really didn't have much to say in the matter. But fortunately, more tonally acute and interesting people, musicians, eventually came to the fore. And it really took about 20, almost 30 years after what Edison did in this room to recorded music really became, changed the world. And I would say Louis Armstrong was really the guy who did that. If Thomas Edison were alive today, he'd be grabbing my iPhone and being like, what the heck is that? And, probably within 15 minutes, inventing ways to use the iPhone that none of us have imagined yet.
So he was Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, technology guy.
Thomas Edison was the Steve Jobs of the 20th century, maybe by a factor of 10, because what he really understood was that electricity allowed for the reproduction and the manufacturing and distribution of recorded media, movies and music. And that changed everything.
Anything else that I haven't been smart enough to ask you, would you like to say about this project?
Well, the thing about Thomas Edison is he didn't just essentially bring movies and music to us, he invented the electrical grid. So he was the guy that wired the world. So pretty much everything that we take for granted came out of his imagination, and we're in the room that he worked in the factory that he spent 20 hours a day working in. So Red Hot, which is all about innovation and interesting creative ideas for a social purpose, is really proud to be evolving in the 21st century. Our first project, Red Hot and Blue, was a multimedia project in 1990. We had videos, we had music, we had graphic design, we had painting. Now we're doing multimedia for the 21st century. So we are changing music to the form where the person listening to it personalizes and interacts with that music so that every musical experience is new and unique to the moment that you listen to it.
Thank you very much.
Is that good?
Best of success. TV
Thank you.
handshake.